Hello, this is John Hardy from Faster Health and Fitness, and I'm here to give you a quick rundown on what functional therapy is and hopefully compel you to fill your email address in the box there and get to our free ebook and also see my longer version of this little lecture on functional therapy. Now, functional therapy is Faster's program on how to train the rest of the body while avoiding an injured part while it gets through a recovery system. It's great for a therapist because it will give you the skills that are often lacking in program design, and so how to develop the biomechanics that match what you want to achieve and to get them in the energy system that you need so that you get the result of a more functioning body. It's great for the personal trainer because it means you can then work really closely with a good therapist that has the ability to diagnose. And the great thing there is that you can have an appreciation for all the techniques they do to try and speed recovery, protect the recovery process, and you can integrate that into your program of getting your client to change body shape and keep their strength, their wellness, their abilities and their skills. And so the way this course works is simple. We take the possibility of an injury and then we say, well, whatever the injury is, the affected joints will now start to feel less motion. And so luckily, there's 5 different ways you can create motion at a joint. And what will happen is the injury will rule out 1, 2, 3, or maybe 4 of these and leave you with the 5th one, or the 4th and 5th, or the 3rd, 4th and 5th, for you to use to start to get motions into that joint to allow strength to stay, to allow flexibility to stay, to allow power to stay, so that as the client recovers more, their body's built up well enough to handle having sort of a weaker link for a while, rather than the rest of the body degenerating with the injury. Now, we've got an example here that I'll go into more depth in. Once you sign up for the newsletter, you come through, you get your free ebook, you get to watch my slightly more in-depth version of this. But if we just take here, we have an injury here that's it's caused really by probably overuse or poor biomechanics for that individual, caused possibly by another injury that never fully recovered, or for whatever reason. But the resultant factor is that you now have this part of the body that's dysfunctional, and someone with a diagnosis skills needs to take care of that. Now, as they're taking care of that and helping the recovery process and making that happen, and that may be you and your skill set, but as that's happening, you need to be aware that we have some muscles that are affected, and these muscles that are affected have relationship to the rest of the body. So while you're dorsiflexing, everting, abducting or adducting, there's an effect at the knee, there's an effect at the hip, there's an effect down the opposite leg, up through the spine and into the shoulders. And the closer to the injury, the more the effect. So not going through those motions naturally is going to mean, from a training perspective, we need to get those motions to occur across the other joints in other ways that doesn't prolong the recovery from the injury. And so we have to be really skillful at producing motion. Now, the motions we want to try and avoid down at the ankle are probably these combinations. So dorsiflexion, eversion, abduction, dorsiflexion, inversion, adduction. Well, the knock-on effect of those, of course, will be both hips, but the injured side most will probably be missing all these things. You go into your most amount of flexion and extension when you're in your most amount of dorsiflexion, if you think of everyday life, of walking around and squatting and lifting. And so we need to take into consideration, how can we drive all these 8 motions? How can we load them? How can we get them while the rest of the body's in similar positions to the ones of everyday activity? And how can we get them to feel that workload and keep their strength, power, flexibility during the healing time from whatever injury is occurring, and in this case the injury in the Achilles. Now, to do that, you have to have the ability to produce all of those 8 motions at will without getting any of the motions down in the foot and ankle that you're aiming for. And you do that by knowing how to change bone motion to use the correct one of these ways of getting motion. And again, it's so you don't create more stress or problem or injury at this point. So the idea would be, how can we get these to happen? Now, to do that, as we go through our functional therapy course, we'll take you through joint by joint and every possibility to see this. And if you click through, we'll explain more how we do this through online pre-recorded education like this, but also live online education through Hangouts and using the Google Plus system, which is then recorded and then shared via Google Plus and Facebook, so that you get to see people working with real clients. You get to interact with everyone who's ever done functional therapy, everyone who's about to do it, and you get to stay in a group that will keep learning as the material improves, and it will, as we bring on great people, hopefully like yourself, to bring their unique skills and vision to this course. As it grows, you're always in. And so this is not a start and finish course, and even though there's an end, it's on a cycle, so you get to join the next set of people learning just a few weeks after the first set finish. So we try and work out how can we get those 8 combinations at the hip, but we do all combinations for all joints within the course. And then we start to look at this and we say, right, well, what does flexion require to happen at the hip? And you could say, well, the femur has to be rotating posteriorly with dominance. So that means the pelvis is still, or the pelvis is going posteriorly slower, or the pelvis is going anteriorly. Or the pelvis has to be rotating anteriorly faster than the femur that's going anterior, because the femur's not going anterior but it's going, or they're traveling in opposite directions, and so all of those sort of, right, there's 5 different variations will come together to give you those 5 ways of getting flexion at the hip. Well, then you might say, well, what I can't have happen is I can't have the tibia to anteriorly rotate. So what I need to do is work out, well, how does the femur anteriorly rotate the tibia? And so that would happen if you posteriorly rotate the femur and you stay on the spot. That would anteriorly rotate the tibia. So if we want to get some extra flexion, we need to find a way of either using a change in motion, so moving from A to B. So you might have them step back as they drop in height, so that the femur posteriorly rotates but travels backwards, which pulls their tibia into a posterior rotation while they drop in height, so like a posterior lunge. While you get an anterior rotation from the pelvis, so with a reach forward. Or you may say, what I want to do is actually I'm going to get them to do a driver that's from the top down, so they reach forward and down, and that pushes the knee back, and you end up with the pelvis rotating anteriorly quicker than the femur rotates anteriorly, and that's how you get flexion and you don't disturb the ankle. And obviously you need to do that as you go through all the motions you want to improve with the client. Now, another way of doing that is we could just hang the foot up. And so if you watch this video, look, you could just get the foot out of the way. So you could hang it up or just keep it out of the way. And in that scenario, look, the foot's just moving. Both hips are getting to feel that motion. We've put a jump in there. But obviously you could do anything you like. You could do a balance, a reach, a squat, whatever it takes to make that work. If you can do that and you can get the client through that, during the recovery period, both hips, as you can see there clearly, get all the motions you want. You can also use the different motions at the upper body to get the extremities moving as you want, and that would be a good scenario. So then once they start to recover enough, and now you want to work a little closer at the joint, maybe you could then employ a hands-on technique, and the hands-on technique will give you the ability to control the motion in the environment, so there's not a chance of making the injury worse. But at the same time, it can allow you to feel that the motions are actually coming into the body parts that you want. And maybe in this scenario, the midfoot locks up a lot, and this gives you a good chance to get the midfoot free. And then finally, once a client's away and they're clear, then you've got a responsibility to try and help them learn the skills that will make sure it doesn't happen again. And that would bring us on to the last component. And the last component would be, what kind of skills can we come up with that would ask them to be able to stabilize and use their foot and ankle through all the motions we want to see that, could cause the problem in the future or might have caused an irritation before. And let's see if we can keep it mobile and the rest of the body moving. And so, in a nutshell, that's how functional therapy works. Now, to get to that point, there's a lot of tasks underneath. There's a lot of thought process going on through the biomechanics of the movement and then matching the energy systems. But this is a really good course for anyone with any kind of background in rehabilitation or in training clients that may get injured. It's a great way of bridging that gap between therapist and trainer. And so what I've done is I've written an ebook on just how you might go about building these exercises, these unique biomechanical movements for your client to then match to the energy system that will help your client keep recovering across the rest of the body while the tissue damage or the whatever damage recovers on its own. That book's there once you sign up. Plus I'll go through this at less of a pace, so you can really get a handle on how functional therapy could work for you. The course is taught online. You get access to notes, you get access to videos. There's also videos on functional nutrition as a bonus. There's 8 hours of those. There's around 10 hours of talks on everything from building the biomechanics all the way through to, well, what would someone in therapy use? What are they using now? Things such as tool-assisted massage, any kind of therapy that's coming around. Via Facebook and the Google Hangouts, you'll get to discuss things like barefoot training and is that an effective way of getting the rehab? Is it protective enough? Is it causing the problem? You could be talking about different forms of therapy. Perhaps they're proven, perhaps they're not, perhaps there's a placebo effect. As we go through the course, we'll generate research on any areas that you have that the course doesn't naturally cover. And the idea is that this is a big online group learning task that you can't help but learn from, and it can't help but be useful to you. And by you getting involved, you're also that one extra piece of knowledge, thought process, different angle of eyes on the situation, which will grow the course as well. And so if you're interested, if you just want to see the ebook, if you just want that and see the lecture, either or both, please just drop your email address in the side. You'll come through straight to our site, jump in, download the ebook, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side where I'll run through this quite a bit slower.